The De'Aaron Fox trade to the San Antonio Spurs isn't as big of a shocker as the Luka Doncic trade to LA, but this trade is still so massive because it signifies the franchise's first big win-now transaction of the Victor Wembanyama era. Well, it's not like the Spurs are rushing their young superstars' timeline, but it's Wembanyama's trajectory that might be rushing them instead, as Wembanyama is already contending for a spot in the All-NBA first team while also leading the Defensive Player of the Year race just halfway into his sophomore season. Well, sure, the Spurs are currently in 12th place in the Western Conference and are on pace to make the play-in tournament, but overall, trading for De'Aaron Fox is definitely more about the franchise's future, and this was definitely done to supply Wembanyama with a real co-star to make further strides in preparation for NBA title contention sooner rather than later. Well, first of all, Wembanyama has never played with a star in his prime like De'Aaron Fox. The 27-year-old guard is a hyper-athletic 3-level scorer who's averaged at least 25 points per game in each of the past 5 years. He plays with such superb speed and a deadly driving attack as someone who's also averaging more points in the paint than every other guard outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this season. But more than that, Fox is also one of the most clutch players in the entire NBA, as nobody has scored more fourth-quarter points than him in the league over the past 3 years. And that should only further benefit this San Antonio Spurs team that has had a 10-11 win-loss record in clutch situations this season. Well, the critics would emphasize that De'Aaron Fox is only a one-time All-Star who was basically miscast as a number one option for the Sacramento Kings, as the Kings always had a losing record before Domantas Sabonis arrived to give Fox help, which is why it's quite unclear which among the two actually deserve more credit for lifting the Sacramento Kings back to the playoffs. But regardless, De'Aaron Fox still makes a lot more sense as a clear second option in support of a superior superstar big man like Wembanyama. And you just gotta give Fox credit for citing San Antonio as his trade destination of choice, basically recognizing a massive growth opportunity in the middle of his prime. This reminds me of how much better Tony Parker's career looks like as he played with Tim Duncan for 15 long years instead of potentially wasting away his talent on any other team. But then you also gotta give props to the Spurs front office for acquiring Fox without actually giving up a ton. Sure, Trey Jones, Zach Collins, Siri Sissoko, 4 first-rounders, and a pair of second-round picks might seem a lot, but giving up those assets still did little to impact the Spurs' score, as they still were able to pull off this trade without giving up their top 8 rotation players in terms of minutes, which includes Stephon Castle, Jeremy Sochan, and Devin Vassell, who are all crucial building blocks for the Spurs' future. Again, the De'Aaron Fox trade could be viewed as a win-now move, but more than anything, in this video, let's talk about how this trade sets up the future of Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs franchise. So let's get to it. One of the reasons as to why the Spurs were so bad during Wembanyama's rookie year was because they started the season with an experiment, trying forward Jeremy Sochan as a point guard, which obviously didn't go well. No wonder, much later in the season, when the Spurs paired Wembanyama with Trey Jones, who was the only true point guard in the roster, the Spurs outscored opponents by a team-best 4.3 points per 100 possessions in minutes when Trey Jones and Wembanyama shared the floor together. The front office recognized this, and in the offseason, they signed Chris Paul, who at 39 years old can still feed Wembanyama easy shots, but at this point of his career, CP3 just can't sustain a playoff-caliber effort for a full season anymore. Well, Stephon Castle might actually be the team's future at the point guard spot, but right now, he's obviously much more suited as a connective player at the wing who passes well, plays great defense, and makes a ton of solid decisions as a secondary ball handler. And now, with the arrival of De'Aaron Fox, Castle can now comfortably play that secondary ball handler role over the next few years, and also with Fox's arrival, Chris Paul can eventually lessen his playmaking load while at the same time allowing the Spurs to field the star point guard for a full 48 minutes every single game. But most notably, De'Aaron Fox has never played with someone like Victor Wembanyama. Well, don't get me wrong, Domantas Sabonis is a star-caliber big man, but everything he doesn't do well, such as spacing the floor and protecting the rim, are actually things that Wembanyama does at a really high level. So just imagine the possibilities in San Antonio when you have a speed demon like Fox running down the court in transition, collapsing the defense and forcing his way into the paint, while Wemby trails the play and gets a wide open catch-and-shoot three-pointer. But it could also go the other way around, with Wembanyama starting to break all by himself before he dishes out a lob pass to Fox for the fast break dunk. Although this tandem might even be more dangerous in the half-court out-of-ball screen situations, as among all players this season who have averaged at least 5 possessions per game as a pick-and-roll ball handler, only Darius Garland and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander are averaging more points out of pick-and-rolls than De'Aaron Fox. So now, imagine how many more buckets he could generate out of ball screen situations when he's now playing with the most dangerous ball screen partner in Wembanyama, a 7'3" guy who shoots 36% from deep on 9 attempts per game, but is also unstoppable within 3 feet of the basket. Well, the way teams tend to guard the Spurs right now is simply by switching a lot of their ball screen actions. But now, opponents wouldn't want to switch in Fox and Wembanyama pick and rolls. You just can't put a big man in Fox because of his blow-by speed paired with his ability to decelerate into a mid-range jumper or floater. And that ability by Fox to consistently get touches in the paint would just make Wembanyama's pick-and-pop game much harder to deal with. Well, sure, on the defensive end, De'Aaron Fox gambles a lot on the perimeter to get steals, but I think that's a type of aggression that's easier to forgive in San Antonio when you have strong perimeter defenders like Stephon Castle, Jeremy Sochan, and to some extent Devin Vassell. And of course, when you have the greatest defensive center in the NBA today acting as your last line of defense instead of Domantas Sabonis. Well, it's not to say that De'Aaron Fox is a perfect fit in San Antonio. In particular, the stagnation of his three-point shooting now becomes one of the most important storylines that we should be watching. Fox has had an outlier season last year when he shot 37% from deep, but that was the only time he shot better than 33% over the past 6 seasons. So to set up Fox and Wembanyama for long-term success, San Antonio will definitely want to put maximum shooting around them. And that's when you have to applaud the front office for being able to keep Devin Vassell, who's a career 37% three-point shooter, who will probably now get more open looks with the arrival of Fox. But on the other hand, this also puts pressure on recent first-round picks Stephon Castle and Jeremy Sochan to continue developing from behind the arc, given their three-point percentages are still in the 20s. Obviously, this still isn't the most ideal roster around Wembanyama, but then I think it's still early in the Wembanyama era to be nitpicking, and overall, it's hard to overstate how much of an upgrade Wemby has experienced at point guard, from having Sochan to Chris Paul to now De'Aaron Fox in just a matter of 10 months. And again, most importantly, the Spurs didn't have to sacrifice a ton of future draft assets to acquire Fox. Looking at it, the only 2025 first-round picks that the Spurs gave up in the trade were both protected picks, which wouldn't really have landed them top talent in this year's draft anyway. Meanwhile, the team still controls almost all of their valuable first-round picks, which includes 2 unprotected first-rounders from Atlanta in 2025 and 2027, another unprotected first-round pick from either Dallas or Minnesota in 2030, and also unprotected pick swaps with Atlanta in 2026 and Sacramento in 2031. So, while trading for De'Aaron Fox speeds up the Spurs' timeline, having all these assets still allows San Antonio to further assess the value of their players while playing alongside their new star tandem. Well, for sure, in an ideal world, San Antonio would have waited a little longer to pull the trigger on a trade like this, as Fox is 6 years older than the 21-year-old Wembanyama and is also nearly 7 years older than Stephon Castle. So I think the concern about how Fox might age into his next contract is understandable. Well, even though Fox is no longer eligible for a Supermax contract even if he makes the All-NBA team this season by virtue of being traded, he's still eligible to sign a massive 4-year $228 million extension which the Spurs can offer him this coming offseason. The Spurs can even top that up by an extra $9 million by using their cap room to do a renegotiation and extension of his deal to bump up his salary to a projected max amounting to $46.4 million per year, which would probably be closer to Fox's desired contract. Although I think that would just be a bad use of the team's resources, especially when the Spurs don't project to have a ton of cap room left once you take into account the 2 first-round players they would be drafting this year. But the thing is, either way, even after paying De'Aaron Fox his max deal this offseason and after paying Wembanyama his own max in the summer of 2027, San Antonio's cap sheet is still flexible enough and their assets still tempting enough for them to freely go after a potential third star. And I think that was a huge factor that allowed San Antonio to push for the De'Aaron Fox trade. You can question paying him the max heading into his 30s, but the Spurs are just set up in such a way that Fox doesn't necessarily have to be their second best player in a few years. But if he really ends up as Victor Wembanyama's long-term sidekick, Fox would be the second most important player for a team that would be in annual title contention that's gonna be put in a spotlight that few teams will be able to match. Sure, nothing is guaranteed in the NBA, but the absolute best case scenario here for Fox is him existing right at the center of the NBA's universe as the point guard of a potential dynasty in San Antonio. For now though, it would be interesting to see if there's time for the Spurs to make a run at the play-in tournament this season, considering the competition now includes the new-look Sacramento Kings with Zach Lavine, the Dallas Mavericks with Anthony Davis, and the Golden State Warriors with Jimmy Butler. But whatever happens, the De'Aaron Fox trade is more about setting up the Spurs' future for 2026 and beyond. With Wembanyama, San Antonio was already a rising threat in the loaded Western Conference full of quality young teams, but adding De'Aaron Fox simply pushes the Spurs' championship goals closer to reality. But do you actually believe that De'Aaron Fox could be the Spurs' second best player by the time they're already competing for NBA titles? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and again, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing as well. Again, this has been Real Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.